Silence has always been misunderstood. In a world that glorifies constant expression, the absence of words is often seen as emptiness, submission, or confusion. But for the one who sees deeper, silence is none of these things. Silence is presence without noise. It is action without display. It is clarity without explanation. Especially for a woman, silence is not just a practice. It is a declaration that no energy will be wasted on battles unworthy of her strength. To stay silent does not mean to lack a voice. It means choosing not to throw pearls before chaos. It means withholding power until it is purposeful. It means understanding that not everything requires your input, your defense, your explanation. A woman who is constantly reacting to the world around her becomes a puppet of her environment. But a woman who can observe without reacting, who can hold her ground in silence, is untouchable. Because in silence, she is not only conserving her energy, she is sharpening it. Silence is the ground from which self-mastery grows. Without silence, the mind is scattered. Every sound, every comment, every opinion becomes a hook. It pulls at you. It invites you to defend, to explain, to prove. But once you become silent, these hooks lose their grip. They pass through the space of your presence without leaving a mark. Silence gives you the power to be unmoved by the world. And when you are unmoved, you become unshakable. There is a particular strength in refusing to be dragged into the arena of noise. It takes discipline not to reply when your name is called through gossip. It takes clarity not to engage in meaningless conflict. It takes awareness to feel the pull of emotional reactions and still remain still. This strength is not the kind that comes from resistance. It comes from detachment, a calm refusal to participate in energies that lower your frequency. The woman who embraces this silence becomes rooted like an ancient tree. She does not bend with every breeze of opinion. She does not chase the echo of empty words. In a moment of confrontation, silence speaks louder than argument. In a moment of disrespect, silence cuts deeper than retaliation. The silent woman is not passive. She is calculating. Every silence is a decision to let the storm pass without stepping into it. Because the moment you enter the storm, you become a part of it. But if you stand still and let the wind roar around you, you remain intact, whole, unbroken. And while others are lost in the noise, you are building from stillness. When you do not speak, you begin to hear, not the noise of the world, but the voice within. It is in silence that your inner compass awakens. Every time you withhold speech, You redirect your energy inward. You begin to notice what drains you. You begin to see who triggers your peace and why. You begin to understand the rhythm of your own thoughts. This understanding cannot be bought. It cannot be given by another. It is earned through the discipline of silence. A woman who is always explaining herself never gets the chance to experience herself. But the woman who steps back, who watches without speaking, begins to see with clarity. She sees the patterns that once controlled her. She sees the games others play to provoke her. She sees the power that comes when she no longer needs to respond to everything. And that power grows because silence is fertile. It is not empty. It is full of intention, full of patience, full of listening. People will misunderstand your silence. Let them. They will call it arrogance, coldness, distance. Let them. They are not supposed to understand. Because what you are doing is not for their comfort. It is for your elevation. The one who truly knows you does not need your words. And the ones who do not know you will only twist them. So you protect your energy by holding your voice until it becomes undeniable. In silence, you create distance. And from that distance, you see truth. You see who chases you only when you are no longer available. You see who grows restless when they cannot control your response. You see who remains when your energy is no longer easily accessible. And in that seeing, you gain wisdom because silence filters your life. It reveals what noise hides. It purifies what distraction pollutes. You cannot grow in noise. You can survive, but you cannot evolve. Growth requires space. It requires internal stillness. It requires withdrawal from the external so that you can anchor yourself in the internal. And only silence can take you there. Not forced silence, not silence out of fear, but chosen silence, willing silence. The kind of silence that comes when you are no longer willing to betray your peace for temporary satisfaction. The woman who learns to be silent without becoming bitter becomes dangerous because she has mastered the art of restraint. She does not need revenge. She does not seek validation. She does not fear misunderstanding. Her silence is not empty. It is sacred. It is a place where she stores her observations, her lessons, her plans. And from that silence, she acts not impulsively, but with precision. She does not scatter her words like seeds on barren land. She plants them carefully, intentionally. And when she finally speaks, the world listens, because silence is not the absence of voice. It is the presence of power. A power that is not easily moved, not easily provoked, not easily seen until it is too late. And by then, the silent woman has already reshaped the ground beneath her. Not with noise, but with presence. Not with reaction, but with mastery. Focus is not simply about paying attention. It is the active decision to direct your energy toward what is meaningful, while refusing to be pulled into what is meaningless. When a woman chooses to focus on herself, she is making a quiet but powerful statement that her time, her energy, her thoughts, and her life are worthy of care. This kind of focus is not surface level. It is not about appearance, not about performance. It is about returning fully to herself, her inner world, her center, her essence. A distracted life is a diluted life. Every time you let yourself be consumed by others' opinions, every time you feel the need to compare, to please, to prove, you split yourself. That splitting weakens your presence. It makes you forget who you are. But when you begin to pull back, when you redirect your focus away from others and back toward your own path, you begin to feel whole again. You stop leaking energy. You stop abandoning yourself for temporary validation. For the woman who chooses focus, the world begins to change. Not because the world itself changes, but because the lens through which she sees becomes clearer. She begins to notice the subtle patterns in her life, the unconscious habits, the repetitive emotions, the toxic cycles that once drained her in silence. Focus is awareness. And awareness is the beginning of transformation. You cannot change what you do not see. And you cannot see what you are too distracted to notice. Most people are pulled by the noise outside. Notifications, conversations, judgments, comparisons. But focus pulls you inward. It quiets the outside world so the inside can be heard. In this space, you begin to notice what you truly need. You begin to ask deeper questions. What nourishes me? What drains me? What am I doing because I love it? And what am I doing because I'm afraid not to? These questions open doors, but you only find the keys when you're fully present. To focus on yourself does not mean to be selfish. It means you have stopped giving pieces of yourself to things that leave you empty. It means you are no longer willing to trade your peace for approval. It means you value your own alignment more than being liked. Because self-respect begins when you decide that your attention is sacred. It is a form of self-protection to not let just anyone enter your mind. Not everyone deserves a place in your thoughts. And focus is not only about what you do, it's about how you do it. When you walk, are you walking mindfully or rushing through your thoughts? When you speak, Are you speaking with intention or out of habit? When you work, are you creating from your center or reacting to pressure? Focus brings you into the moment. It sharpens your actions. It makes your energy clean, undivided. And that kind of energy is powerful. It moves with clarity. It speaks with weight. A woman who is focused on herself becomes magnetic, not because she tries to attract, but because her energy is no longer scattered. She carries herself with direction. She does not chase. She does not convince. She is too busy watering her own garden to wonder about someone else's opinion of it. And in that silence, in that stillness, others begin to notice. They feel the difference. Because focused energy can be felt, it doesn't need to be shown. There is a kind of dignity in choosing yourself quietly, consistently. Not loudly, not with announcement, but with presence. It shows in how you wake up, how you eat, how you walk into a room. It shows in how you say no, how you set boundaries, how you let go. This dignity cannot be faked. It comes from focus. Because when you truly respect yourself, your actions begin to align with that respect. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop arguing for your value. Focus is also discipline, not the rigid kind, but the sacred kind. It is choosing what serves your growth, even when it's uncomfortable. It is waking up and choosing your path again and again, despite distractions, despite temptation. It is the steady hand that holds your direction when the world tries to shake you. And that discipline becomes your freedom. Because when you are focused, you are no longer a prisoner of outer forces. You move from your own rhythm, not from the push and pull of others. Everything around you will try to fragment your attention. Advertising, opinions, social pressures, emotional noise. But your power lies in your ability to pull it back in, to narrow it down, to come home to yourself. Not in theory, but in practice. In the small daily choices, in the decision to meditate instead of scroll, to reflect instead of react, to observe instead of absorb. That is how focus becomes your weapon, not against the world, but for yourself. A focused woman is a force because she is not easily swayed. She is not constantly reacting. She is not trying to be everywhere for everyone. She is here, now, rooted. Her energy is directed. Her presence is intentional. And that is the highest form of self-respect. To guard your attention as something sacred. To let it touch only what you want to grow. Detachment is not about indifference or avoidance. It is not emotional numbness, nor is it coldness toward life. True detachment is presence without possession. It is the ability to engage fully in the world while remaining rooted in your own center. When a woman learns to detach, she is not withdrawing from life. She is returning to herself. She is no longer entangled in every emotion, every situation, every outcome. She begins to understand that peace is not found by controlling the outer world, but by loosening the grip on the need to control it at all. Focusing on yourself and staying silent creates the kind of detachment that opens space inside you, space for breath, space for reflection, space for stillness. In this space, clarity enters, emotions settle, reactions fade, and wisdom begins to rise. Most of what pulls people into suffering is not the event itself, but the way the mind clings to it. The need to be right, the need to be heard, the need to fix or change what is beyond their power. Detachment cuts through that noise. It allows the woman to observe without immediately identifying, to feel without being ruled by what is felt. In detachment, you begin to see your own patterns. You begin to notice how often your peace is disturbed by the behavior of others, by the unpredictability of outcomes, by the fear of being misunderstood. But the moment you step back, not physically, but mentally, you create space between what happens and how you respond. That space is sacred. It is the place where transformation begins. It is where you regain your power. Because now, instead of being a servant to every wave that rises within, you become the ocean itself, deep, vast, undisturbed. There is freedom in letting go of the need to be involved in everything. The world will always offer you distractions, conversations that do not nourish you, relationships that drain more than they give, expectations that ask you to abandon yourself to meet them. When you detach, you are not running away from responsibility. You are choosing to invest your energy where it matters. You are protecting your inner world from unnecessary invasion. This protection is not built with walls. It is built with awareness. Awareness that not everything is yours to carry. Not every conflict is yours to resolve. Not every emotion is yours to absorb. A woman who embraces detachment walks differently. She is not hurried by external urgency. She is not easily provoked. She sees the emotional storms of others, but she does not drown in them. She holds her silence like a shield, not to hide behind, but to anchor her presence. In her silence, she processes, she observes, she understands, and in this understanding, she grows. Because growth requires space, and detachment creates that space. You do not find yourself in noise. You find yourself in distance, in the quiet between reactions, in the pause between thoughts. Detachment is the decision to no longer abandon yourself just to maintain an illusion of connection. It is knowing that real connection can only exist in truth. And truth cannot bloom where there is constant emotional entanglement. When you detach, you are no longer afraid to be alone. You begin to enjoy your own company. You begin to trust your own voice. And from that trust, your path becomes clearer. Detachment also reveals the attachments you were blind to. The people whose presence you depended on for validation. The outcomes you needed to feel worthy. The roles you played to feel important. As you detach, those illusions begin to dissolve. And with them, the anxiety that came from trying to hold them all together. You begin to breathe deeper. You begin to live lighter. Because you are no longer holding on to what was never yours to hold. It is not that the detached woman does not care. It is that she no longer sacrifices herself to care. She can love without losing herself. She can give without expecting. She can walk away without bitterness. This balance does not come from apathy. It comes from inner strength, a strength forged in silence, in reflection, in the discipline of self-focus. While the world rushes to react, she chooses to observe. And in that observation, she understands what others miss. Detachment also strengthens your intuition. Because when you are no longer wrapped in the noise of reaction, you can hear the soft voice within. You can feel what is right for you. Not because someone told you, but because your inner space is clear enough to listen. You stop needing signs from the outside. You stop seeking approval. Your guidance comes from within. That guidance is not loud, but it is steady. And the more you listen, the more you trust it. This is how detachment builds inner leadership. From this space, life becomes less of a battlefield and more of a classroom. You stop fighting for control and start learning from each moment. You begin to understand the value of letting go, not as a loss, but as a movement toward peace. In detachment, your energy is no longer scattered. It is gathered. And with gathered energy, you are no longer reactive. You are intentional. You choose your words. You choose your steps. You choose your presence. And in that choosing, you align with a deeper power. Not the power of force, but the power of inner space. There is a point in every woman's life when she realizes that the struggle outside is a reflection of the disconnection within. She may have spent years trying to organize the world around her, fixing relationships, chasing perfection, pleasing people, building structures to feel safe. but still feeling unsettled. This restlessness does not come from the world itself. It comes from the absence of alignment within. When the inner world is scattered, no matter how much effort is poured into the outer world, peace remains out of reach. But when inner order is restored, when thoughts, emotions, and energy are brought into harmony, the chaos outside begins to lose its grip. Inner order is not about controlling every emotion. It is not about suppressing discomfort or pretending to be composed. It is the ability to understand what is happening inside you and respond with clarity. It is recognizing that not every emotion needs a reaction, not every thought needs to be believed, and not every impulse needs to be followed. This awareness builds stability, and that stability is what ends the game of external control, because when you are no longer ruled by your internal confusion, no one outside of you can manipulate or control your path. There is a profound strength in knowing your own mind. When a woman becomes familiar with her own emotional landscape, she is no longer intimidated by the storms of others. She does not shrink when someone disapproves of her. She does not crumble when faced with rejection or opposition. Her inner order becomes her shield. It keeps her grounded when others try to provoke her. It allows her to stay calm when others act out. She does not need to match their chaos. She has created her own system, and it is built on self-respect, self-awareness, and silence. This inner structure is not rigid. It is alive. It adjusts and evolves, but it does not collapse under pressure. When the mind is ordered, clarity replaces confusion. You begin to see the emotional games others play. You begin to sense the energy behind words, the unspoken motives behind actions. And this seeing gives you choice. You are no longer reacting unconsciously. You are responding consciously. That is where your freedom begins. Not in controlling others, but in no longer needing to be controlled. External control often appears in subtle ways. Through guilt, through obligation, through the silent pressure to conform. When the inner world is weak, these forces manipulate you easily. They tell you what you should do, who you should be, how you should act. And without internal strength, you comply. But once you build inner order, those same pressures no longer penetrate. You become anchored. You can hear someone's demand and not take it personally. You can feel someone's disappointment and not let it define your decisions. You begin to live from your truth, not as rebellion, but as alignment. Inner order also brings emotional discipline, not suppression, not denial, but conscious redirection. When anger rises, you know how to hold it. When sadness visits, you know how to sit with it. When doubt creeps in, you do not run. You observe. This internal management creates peace because it prevents the chaos within from spilling into your actions. The woman who manages her internal world no longer needs to control the outside. She does not micromanage. She does not over-explain. She does not beg for understanding. She moves differently. She trusts the system within her. You cannot stop people from trying to control you. But you can make their efforts irrelevant, not by resistance, but by becoming impenetrable. This does not mean being distant or cold. It means being so in tune with your values, your direction, your rhythm, that outside opinions carry no weight unless they resonate with your truth. Inner order gives you a filter. Not everything enters. Not everything stays. You choose what you carry. This level of clarity does not come overnight. It is built in silence. It is built in solitude. It is built in the small decisions, choosing reflection over reaction, choosing stillness over drama, choosing growth over comfort. Every time you make one of these choices, you are building the foundation of your internal order. And with each brick you lay, you become more free. Not because the world has changed, but because you are no longer shaped by it. External control thrives where there is inner confusion. When you do not know who you are, others will decide for you. When you do not trust your voice, you will follow theirs. When your emotions run wild, others will use them against you. But when you bring order to your mind, calm to your body, and focus to your soul, you become unshakable. People may try to provoke you, manipulate you, silence you, but they will fail because you are not fighting them. You are simply rooted in something deeper than approval or resistance. You are aligned from within, and alignment cannot be forced from the outside. When you do not gain control over your life by tightening your grip, you gain control by loosening the attachments to what is outside of your control. Inner order is knowing what is yours to carry and what must be released. It is choosing not to chase, not to beg, not to explain. It is choosing to protect your peace as your highest priority. When the inner space is clean, the outer noise becomes just that, noise. It does not disrupt. It does not define. It simply passes, and you remain centered in your own clarity. There is a presence that cannot be ignored. It does not shout. It does not demand. It does not seek approval. Yet when it enters a space, it is felt immediately. This presence is not built from how loudly a woman speaks or how visible she makes herself. It comes from her energy, how she carries herself, how still she can be in chaos, how deeply rooted she is in her own silence. The world does not move because of noise. It moves in response to energy. And the woman who masters her energy no longer needs to force anything. Most people live in reaction. They speak quickly, move fast, and project power in loud and obvious ways. But this kind of power is temporary, easily disturbed, and often dependent on being seen. Energy that is truly powerful doesn't require constant performance. It is not reactive. It is not impulsive. It is quiet, grounded, and intentional. A woman who has learned to regulate her inner world, who has cultivated calm through silence and focus, becomes a force that influences without speaking. She does not need to explain who she is. Her energy makes it known. There is a difference between a woman who is trying to prove and a woman who already knows it. One will exhaust herself trying to be understood, trying to be chosen, trying to stay relevant. The other simply shows up. She lets her energy speak for her. It is not about the volume of her voice, but the quality of her presence. People remember how she made them feel, not because she tried to impress them, but because she was whole in herself. This wholeness is magnetic. It draws in without chasing. It commands without controlling. Energy is created from what you do when no one is watching. It is shaped in the still hours, in the silent mornings, in the disciplined evenings. It is built when you choose to sit with your emotions instead of dumping them onto others. When you rise early to strengthen your body and clear your mind. When you decline invitations that do not align with your purpose. These moments, invisible to the world, form the foundation of the energy you carry. And the world responds to that energy, whether it understands it or not. The woman who no longer needs to speak to be heard has cultivated a deep relationship with herself. She does not allow others to pull her into unnecessary conflict. She is not swayed by praise or shaken by judgment. Her emotional stability is not dependent on external circumstances. This creates a sense of mystery and strength. People may not be able to explain it, but they feel it. They sense her self-trust. They notice her boundaries. They feel her presence. And presence is not created through noise. It is born from internal mastery. When a woman chooses stillness over reaction, the entire energy of a space shifts. She does not need to assert herself with dominance. Her calm becomes the loudest voice in the room because calm is rare. In a world of endless talking, endless seeking, endless comparison. A calm woman stands out without trying. She knows that influence does not come from effort, but from embodiment. She does not need to force her way in. Her alignment opens doors. Her silence becomes power. Her focus becomes direction. And her energy becomes undeniable. There are many who will try to speak louder, move faster, show more. But their presence often fades the moment they leave the room. The woman who radiates energy from her core leaves a different mark. Her words are fewer, but they stay. Her actions are quieter, but they carry weight. She understands that energy lingers where noise dies. She invests in the inner work, the emotional discipline, the physical health, the spiritual clarity that cannot be faked. That work becomes her presence. It enters a room before she does. It speaks even when she is silent. The world often tells women to speak up, to stand out, to be visible. But visibility without substance is temporary. The deeper work is not about being seen. It is about becoming unshakable. A woman who is unshakable does not need to defend herself. She does not need to interrupt silence with unnecessary explanation. She has built a sanctuary within herself that cannot be touched by gossip, misunderstanding, or rejection. This sanctuary becomes her power. It gives her an aura of peace that does not beg to be noticed, but is impossible to ignore. Energy reveals truth in a way that words cannot. You can say the right things, but if your energy is restless, uncertain, disconnected, it will be felt. You can stay silent, and if your energy is rooted, clear, and alive, it too will be felt. People often forget what was said, but they always remember how it felt to be in your presence. That feeling comes from the quality of your energy, from your depth, from your silence, from your refusal to be pulled in every direction, from your decision to be intentional with your thoughts, your time, your breath. When a woman begins to protect her energy, she moves differently. She no longer spends her time explaining her boundaries. She simply lives them. She no longer exhausts herself trying to be understood. She becomes so aligned that misunderstanding rolls off her spirit. Her power is quiet but firm. Her silence is not the absence of thought, but the fullness of presence. Her life begins to organize itself not through force, but through frequency. Not through chasing, but through attracting. Not through pleasing, but through standing. And that is the kind of energy the world cannot help but respond to. When a woman chooses to focus on herself and embrace silence, she steps out of the noise and into her own power. No longer shaped by the expectations and chaos of the outer world, she begins to cultivate something far more powerful, inner mastery. In silence, she sharpens her awareness. In focus, she reclaims her energy. Through detachment, she finds peace. By creating inner order, she frees herself from external control. And through disciplined presence, she radiates the kind of energy that moves the world without having to force a single word. This path is not loud. It does not seek attention. It does not beg to be seen. It is rooted, disciplined, intentional. And in walking it, she becomes unshakable, not because the world around her becomes calm, but because she has become calm within. Everything she once tried to chase begins to align. Not because she forced it, but because she finally aligned with herself. She is no longer heard through noise. She is felt through presence. And in that presence, everything begins to fall into place.